More bad news for Obamacare. Why working at the Immigrants and Customs Enforcement Agency is called, quote, hell. Plus, we're on volcano watch. All these stories and more coming up on the Rundown.
All right, stand by. 10 seconds. Talent.
Ready, camera.
Record.
3, 2, 1.
Record.
Thanks so much for joining us. This is The Rundown, where we run down some of the big stories making headlines. I'm your host, John Phillips. Joining me in our LA studio is stand-up comic extraordinaire Stephen Cruiser, and right next to him, the lady in black, Michelle Fields. Now it's time to go to the top of the rundown. And we begin with Michelle.
At the top of my rundown, Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers say it's hell working for the agency right now. They say morale has hit an all-time low. Officers are worried that illegals with criminal records are being released under President Obama's policies. Immigrants are also taunting officers because they believe that they'll be granted amnesty. Officers have asked for a meeting with their superiors to help the situation at the agency. Yeah, so the illegals who are coming over here, they don't care. They're just sticking their tongue out, laughing, smiling at all of these agents because now they know that the president is going to work to make sure that they can stay here up to 5 million people. Is this surprising to you, Cruiser?
No, that's been the case for a long time, where ICE has all this money and they're not allowed to do any of their work. They're not allowed to arrest people. They're not allowed to detain people. They've got municipality police forces countermanding all of their orders. It's got to be one of the roughest jobs out there right now because they're not allowed to do their job. And then people say, oh, look, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because you're not letting anybody do what they're supposed to be doing.
And John, if you think about the politics of this, right, I think Democrats are thinking, well, if we give amnesty, we can secure the Latino vote going into 2016. But isn't this going to alienate all of the people who voted in the November election who said, no, we don't like the president's policies? And even in Oregon, where there was an initiative on the ballot that gave illegal immigrants the right to vote. People in Oregon came out, overwhelmingly said no to that. And that's a very liberal state. What do you think is going to happen with this politically?
Well, the president's in denial of what happened in the midterm elections. And frankly, all the Democrats that would be worried about something like this lost on Election Day. Mm-hmm. So right now you're left with a Democratic Party that's now substantially more liberal than they were before Election Day. You have Democrats representing a lot of the big cities, a lot of the deeply blue states, and they want more goodies for illegal aliens. They want amnesty for illegal aliens. So they're not going to get any pushback from them. But if the Democrats hope to regain the United States Senate next time around, or ever hope to regain the United States House of Representatives, they're going to have to move to the right on this particular issue because the country just doesn't want it. Barack Obama doesn't care. His name will never appear on a ballot again. And so he has this attitude of be damned to the rest of you Democrats because I'm going to do what I want to do.
But don't you think this is what Democrats want? I'd say that this is their way of getting the Hispanic vote in 2016, to solidify them as the party for Latinos, not the Republican Party.
Yeah, but if you're talking about a Democrat that represents San Francisco or a Democrat that represents the west side of Los Angeles or Manhattan, then yeah, it's what they want. But if you're a Democrat that needs to win an election in Oklahoma or in Nebraska or in Florida,
you're in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, this makes you want to buy a rope and a stool.
My biggest fear right now is that the Republicans will snatch defeat from the jaws of victory here and buy into the whole, well, we need to do this to secure the Latino vote thing too, because they were thinking about that with that autopsy they did after the 2012 election, and I'm kind of afraid they might be in a little bit of denial because I never discount the possibility for the GOP doing something like this and them still trying to work on some sort of faux amnesty thing as a pandering move, and I'm like, that worries me still.
I'm for immigration reform so long as the border is secured first. That absolutely has to be necessary before we even talk about immigration reform.
Yes.
So if that's the deal, that they secure the border
first, the White
first,
House will never agree to that.
They just pay lip service.
Okay, let's not forget. Janet Napolitano in the White House said that the border was secure prior to all the children coming across the border.
We know
they had
that
no
that's
control
not true.
over it.
And she was a border state governor.
In their publicly held position is that the border is secure now.
It's not.
No kidding.
Yeah, they pay lip service to it. They say it's our priority too. It is now. We want to do this, and their constituents are idiots, and they believe them.
Time will tell. All right, Cruiser, what do you have for us?
At the top of my rundown, President Obama begins clearing room under the bus for Jonathan Gruber. A video surfaced recently of the consultant who said Obamacare passed because of the stupidity of the American voters. On Sunday, President Obama said Gruber never worked on his staff and expressed an opinion that he completely disagrees with. He added that this is not a reflection on the actual process that was run. Gruber is a health economist at MIT and was paid $400,000 to advise the White House on the Affordable Care Act. And President Obama said, a guy who never really worked on my staff, well, 400 grand's not bad for never actually having worked on the staff. I want that gig, first of all. But the president is out there saying now that there was a lively debate process that I think he's concussed. He's talking about this great debate and discussion that went on. He actually said that leading up to the passing of the law, as if it just went through the normal legislative process and there wasn't all this kind of chicanery in the background. And it was so again, he's going to go out and present. The sad thing is the press really didn't question him much on this. He said this yesterday, and they just started reporting his words as if that was the case, and as if Gruber really wasn't, really was a distant, not part of the staff and everything. So, Michelle, to you first. Do you think the damage from Gruber can be mitigated at all by the Democrats, or has he just blown the lid off of everything?
Well, the problem is I feel like this is a huge story in conservative circles, as it should be a big story, but it's not that big of a story in the mainstream media. I mean, if you watch CNN, MSNBC, they're not really covering this. So my question is, I wonder whether the average American voter who's not completely tuned in to Fox News or conservative media even knows that this happened, right? I mean, isn't that a concern?
That's true. I was watching CNN the other day, and they did like an hour and a half on the Bill Cosby rape allegations and the scientist shirt, and then they went on and on with things like that all day, and there wasn't one mention of Gruber all day long.
Primetime news. I mean, and it's not.
Well, I'll tell you what this did. This confirmed our every suspicion.
Yeah.
This proved that the conservative media got Obamacare right from top to bottom. And we've been maligned by the mainstream media. We've been maligned by the liberal media for all of our coverage on Obamacare, saying that we were making things up to scare people and try to push the government away from doing this. Well, it turns out that we were right. And Gruber is being ignored in the mainstream media right now because he completely discredits their storyline that they've been telling since day one. So they can't admit that this is true without admitting that all of their coverage has been wrong and false and propaganda.
Yeah.
Not that we can ever understand how they really work, but do you think this nudges the Supreme Court at all?
Yes.
Okay.
They read the paper too.
You think it nudges the Supreme Court?
I think so.
I remain skeptical.
Crossing my fingers. At the top of my rundown, support for Obamacare is falling. Not just falling, it's not in the basement, it's below the basement. What do you call that? The core? Core of the earth?
The sub-bunker, the core, yes.
Something like that. New Gallup poll finds Obamacare's disapproval rate has hit a new all-time high. This, as the second enrollment period opens up, 56% of Americans disapprove of the Affordable Care Act. Just 37% of Americans approve. The second enrollment period opened over the weekend, and I'll tell you how this kills them. This kills them because they said that disapproval for Obamacare was high at the beginning because the goodies hadn't started kicking in yet. Yeah. But as soon as the goodies started to kick in, then people would love it, people would open up to it, people would be warm to it. Well, the goodies have kicked in, and people hate it more now than they did back then.
This isn't surprising. I mean, are you surprised by this, Cruiser? I imagine that this would end up happening.
Well, it's getting more expensive too. It's like it's not the increases are not just happening at a more rapid rate than they thought they would. They're bigger increases than anybody thought there would be right now. However, I know how the administration is going to play this. They're going to set this up where the first round was such a spectacular failure from a technology standpoint and everything else that they're going to use that as the relative bar. And if this one goes out with just being slightly less awful, they'll go, hey, look how well this is going.
Yeah,
they're already doing it at 2 days in. They're already doing it 2 days in. I saw 3 stories this morning about how well the website's working this weekend. So the cheerleaders in the media are already on this.
Do people distrust this president on Obamacare and distrust this policy named after this president because they're opposed to it ideologically or because they look at him and the government and the administration as being completely incompetent?
I think it's both. Well, I think incompetence plays into that because they saw what happened with the website, but also they don't trust the president. I mean, his approval rating and also when it comes to whether Americans trust him or not is at an all-time low, and it has to do with the fact that he told the American people that if they like their plan, they can keep it. And now they know that that's not true. So it's both incompetence and that he wasn't completely honest.
And the biggest thing is it's really not helping as many people as they said it was going to help, because it really, if you're really dirt poor, you can go through this convoluted process and get some help right now. But I think there actually were a lot of like middle to lower middle class people who thought this was going to be a real boon to them and help them out with this expense, and it really isn't. It's in fact a lot of those people are now paying more for insurance because their plans got canceled.
And I haven't seen any data on this, but I bet you since Obamacare was enacted, fewer people are going to the doctor. I'll tell you why. The deductibles for a lot of these Obamacare plans are through the roof. And to meet that, you have to go a lot. You have to go a lot starting at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
If you were uninsured prior to that, you probably just went to the hospital and didn't worry about it, because the taxpayers would be stuck with the bill.
I was listening to a talk show the other night that was hosted by a physician, and she's talking about, she said a lot of her physician friends who have private practices want to go cash only now, and they may start doing that, which will be nice for all of us until the government makes that illegal.
Here's my prediction. Indian reservations are going to be the next big place where hospitals are going to start popping up.
Vaccine and a slot machine. That's what I'm talking about, baby. Right there.
They don't have to put up with any of these rules and regulations on Indian
Moving back to Arizona.
All right, now it's time to go under the radar. This, of course, is where we take a look at some of the stories that should have made bigger headlines but didn't. And Cruiser, you're up first.
Under the radar, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel says we're speeding up the training of Iraqi forces to deal with ISIS. Meantime, over the weekend, we learned that a third American aid worker was beheaded by the terror group. Hagel told reporters on Sunday that U.S. Special Operations troops in Iraq are getting an early start on training. He added that U.S. and coalition forces are making progress in the fight against ISIS, but Americans must prepare for a long and difficult struggle. 5 Western hostages have been killed by ISIS in less than 3 months. Apparently, it's 2003, because didn't we do that in 2003 already? We spent 10 years training these troops, and then we pulled them all out, and now we're rushing them back, people back in to train them, and now we're going to train them faster after this. And these are the people that want to run your healthcare. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying about it. It's all you need to know about bureaucracy right there.
Stephen Cruiser in a nutshell. All right, Michelle, what do you have for us?
All right, under the radar, immigrants and Obamacare Medicaid growth go hand in hand. According to a new report from 2011 to 2013, 42% of Obamacare's Medicaid expansion went to immigrants and their children. The majority of immigrants who took advantage of the benefits immigrated to the U.S. legally. This means that illegal immigrants who could be granted amnesty by President Obama would likely have access to Obamacare benefits as well. Right now, we have our infrastructure, our healthcare is imploding. I mean, it's completely... there are too many people, and if we were to legalize all of these 5 million people, which President Obama is planning on doing, we're going to have a little bit of a problem. Our system's already overloaded as it is.
It's an easy fix. Just raise your taxes.
Yeah. You'd be a good Democratic politician.
I mean, that's what they're going to do. Yeah. Either they're going to have to change the law if suddenly 11 million people just show up on the rolls, and they didn't figure that into the algorithm, and they can't afford what's in there now, they're going to have to raise taxes. Mm-hmm. There's no other alternative.
Who misses Newt Gingrich's moon base now? This guy. This guy.
But you know what's funny? Obama's not going to be the one that has to do it. Whoever the next guy is, if it's Hillary Clinton or
well, that's American
Elizabeth
politics at its essence in the last 40 years. It's forever punting to making it somebody else's problem.
Kicking the can down the road.
Now moving on to the world of geology. Under the radar, first Hawaii, now Alaska is dealing with an erupting volcano. Mount Pavlov has been erupting since last week. It has sent ash plumes 30,000 feet into the air above the Alaska Peninsula. The volcano continues to experience intense seismic activity. Meanwhile, in Hawaii, the lava flow from the, Cruiser, you're going to have to pronounce this one. Kilauea volcano continues to march closer to a small town where 2 structures have been destroyed. Residents there have been told to prepare to evacuate at a moment's notice. And this reminds us that we're in God's world, and sometimes things are unpredictable.
I was having this discussion with someone last week. I said, people who don't respect nature deserve whatever nature gives them, okay? Can't they divert the lava? You build a house at the bottom of a volcano, the volcano is going to kill you at some point, okay? If we die in an earthquake here, our bad for living in LA, you know? Nature always wins. Look at tornadoes. Tornadoes just do whatever they want. They come in, take out an entire town, then people are like, nope again.
What scares you most? Hurricanes, tornadoes, volcanoes, earthquakes, floods?
Earthquake, because you get absolutely no warning whatsoever. I feel like with other stuff, you kind of have a little bit of a warning.
I think that's part of its charm, though.
No.
It's the earthquake.
No.
What scares you the most?
Tornado
We
scare.
build our homes off of cliffs.
Yeah.
Like, we're just hanging there, and it's just like a little rupture, and we're gone.
Tornadoes come in, wipe out an entire town. They're just like, one tornado's like, I'm here, and you're gone.
I'll tell you what scares me. Earthquakes in areas that don't normally get earthquakes. Because in California, if there's an earthquake,
Yeah.
at least all the building codes
Yeah.
are that so that you'll survive it.
Yeah.
We saw what happened in Chile where they had that huge 8.0 earthquake, but they have great building codes, so very few people died. Same thing with Fukushima. But you look at places like, what was it, Haiti, that had the big earthquake, and they had cement roofs,
Yeah.
and that was just a disaster. There's lots of cities on the East Coast that have brick buildings, where if there's an earthquake in some place like Manhattan.
Well, we had one in D.C. a few years ago.
Yeah, I
And,
remember that.
It was small, but everyone freaked out because our buildings were not prepared for an earthquake.
And I had the rollers there. The rollers are cool. You just...
That's going to do it for today's show. Give me that one more time, Cruiser.
That's exactly, for those of you not in Los Angeles, that's exactly what we do when the buildings are rolling during an earthquake. We all go,
Be sure to leave your comments in the comments section below. I'm John Phillips for Stephen Cruiser and Michelle Fields joining me here in the City of Angels. Thanks so much for watching The Rundown.